Let's take a look at chili peppers and specifically your health. So what is the link between chili peppers and risk of heart disease? What is the link between chili peppers and risk of things like stroke? How about salt cravings? Do chili peppers affect your cravings for salt? And lastly, do chili peppers really help with weight loss? Let's take a look at all of those topics in today's video. And as always, please don't forget to subscribe, like, and share, and I would love to hear your comments below. Chili peppers are the fruits of plants from the genus Capsicum. Now, they've been part of the human diet, it's going back to 7500 BC, and the active ingredient, and what we're going to talk about today, is capsaicin. So before we dive into all of the fun and exciting research, what's interesting about chili peppers is they have so many different degrees of hotness. Now, for me, the most I've ever done is jalapenos, and they have a Scoville heat unit, which is basically a measure of their spiciness of about 2,500. But chili peppers go all the way up to 16 million on the Scoville heat unit, and that high number belongs to pure capsaicin. Let's dive into some research. So at the American Heart Association Scientific Sessions in 2020, and in this particular study that's about to be published, they looked at dietary records in 4 specific studies. And these were looking at populations in the US, China, Iran, and Italy. They had about over 500,000 folks in all of those studies combined. And what they found was that regular consumption of chili peppers, and although they didn't define it, other studies say 4 or more times per week. But regular consumption versus rare or never had a 26% decrease in cardiovascular mortality. It also had a 23% decrease in cancer mortality and a 25% decrease in all-cause mortality. Let's take a look at another study, and this particular one was looking at specifically Italian adults. Now, this is important because these are the same folks who are following more of a Mediterranean type pattern, which is already known to be healthy. So therefore, the question was, did chili peppers specifically add anything to that, and would there be a difference? So in this longitudinal analysis, which means looking forward, they looked at 22,811 men and women, and they basically followed them for about 8.2 years. Now, they used a validated food frequency questionnaire from the EPIC trials, but they only did that once at the beginning of their longitudinal follow-up. So what they showed over the 8.2 years was that regular consumption, in this particular case, was more than 4 times per week versus rare or none. You had a 23% reduction in all-cause mortality. You had a 34% reduction in the risk of cardiovascular mortality. And for ischemic heart disease, you had a 44% reduction. The data didn't stop there. When they looked at things related to brain, things like death from strokes and other cerebrovascular causes, there was a 61% decrease. Now, keep in mind, as you think about these studies, when it comes to population-based studies, they are not causality. They're basically correlations. And it's always possible that there may be some residual confounders, some stuff that the researchers hadn't thought about. And in this particular study that we just talked about, they only did the food frequency questionnaire at the beginning of the study. And it's very likely that over 8.2 years, things could have changed in terms of their eating patterns. But because there are so many studies in relation to capsaicin and chili peppers that are consistent, it gives us more evidence that there's likely to be a link between chili peppers and heart and brain health. Now, how about looking at salt cravings? So this becomes interesting. Can eating chili peppers affect your cravings for salt? And the answer is yes. In fact, in this study published in the Journal of Hypertension, what they showed was people who consume chili peppers regularly had lower salt cravings. And the biological mechanism that they talked about in this study was that salt intake and sort of your cravings for salt is related to an area of the brain called the insula and the orbitofrontal cortex. And it turns out that capsaicin turns that same area on. So the thought process is that people who are getting regular chili peppers, they're activating that area, so those people have less cravings for salt. How about turning the table a little bit and looking at cancer? Now, the issue with capsaicin and chili peppers and cancer is most of the data is done in vitro or inside the lab looking at cells studies. Now, even though those studies show promising results, they have yet to have good control studies in humans to be able to say that chili peppers make an impact. But the data on in vitro studies and things like animal models shows that it can be beneficial for things like colon cancer, lung cancer, bladder cancer, and a whole lot of different cancers through multitude of mechanisms. And then lastly, when it comes to weight loss, chili peppers actually have lots of different ways that they affect how our bodies gain or lose weight. First thing is they actually help to suppress our bodies from starting to store fat. And this is very beneficial. So if chili peppers are part of your diet, they can actually help in reducing how much visceral fat or that fat around the organs that's really unhealthy for you, you end up accumulating. They also give you a sense of fullness, or they increase satiety and decrease your appetite. And one of the things that they end up doing is they turn on the pathways that help to break down fat. So as you can see, chili peppers have lots of different ways in which they affect our overall health. And really, it's very simple to add a little bit of spice to all of the foods that you eat, and it may actually be healthy for you. I want to thank you so much for checking out this video. I would love to hear your comments below. And as always, don't forget to like, don't forget to share and subscribe. And stay safe and healthy, and I'll see you next time.